Okay, Mr. Phobes here again. This will be the second video in how to work with your scale drawing digitally. So again, this is the ultimate outcome here is that we want to have the orthographic orientation of these images. So, again, one thing to notice is that look at the direction that the shoe is pointing. So if you turn the shoe 90 degrees on its foot, you would see that everything lines up. That's the whole idea, the same, it lines up across. So everything has to line up. Um, if you want to draw your final line, so again, these lines are not necessarily the lines of the shoe, but the lines that you used in the wire shoe. If you want to do them by hand, that's fine. You don't necessarily need to do them in Illustrator. I'll show you how to do that. And same with the dimension lines. You could do that by hand if it was easier. Okay, let's get started. All right. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get that Illustrator file. So go to the blackboard here, and then you're going to go to Assignments, and then you're going to go to the Project 1 Linear Structure. And then you'll notice there are multiple files in here. Eventually you're going to need the 150% Illustrator file, and what we're going to go for is the 50%. So you don't want the PDF because that's not an Illustrator file. You want to click on the Wireshoe 50% 2017 AI. Click on it, it'll download to your desktop. All right. So here it is on my desktop. I'm going to select it and it'll open Illustrator. I already had Illustrator up, that's why it opened so quickly. So a couple of things. When you open Illustrator, let's make sure that we're set in Essentials. That'll be just fine for what we're doing. So we want to be in that workspace. Okay. A couple of things is go to Windows and make sure that layers are checked. And then the other thing is you want to make sure that transparency is checked. That's going to be important for us. Okay. Just like Photoshop, you can set your preferences for the different types of interaction, and you can set the user interface, and that's where you select the value. I like working on a little darker value for some reason. I don't know why, but I do. Okay. All right. One thing that you still need to do in Photoshop is that we need to scale these images. So you want to make sure that as you're changing the sizes of these images, you're giving them new file names. Otherwise, you will destroy that original file. So again, you can tell if it's the right size. We'll go to image size, and it's 11.5 times 4.5. Okay, so there's just, we won't worry about that. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to reduce this by 50%. So if I can't do the math in my head of 11.5, let me just do it. So I'm just going to cheat here a minute and make sure it's 4.5. Okay, and then I want to, so if it needs, this is important, these need to be linked. It looks like it doesn't want to do that for me. So I'm going to change this to 2.25, right? So it should be 5.75. It's close enough. I'm not sure why it's doing that, but it is 150. So I'm going to go OK. All right. Now I'm going to go File, Save As, and I had called this Shoe 1, and now I'm going to call it Shoe 150, and I'm going to save it as a PNG file. I'm going to save it to the desktop. Okay, so I've done that with my other files. They've all been saved at 50%, but now I have a copy of the original at the 100%, and then at 50%, when you go to do the 150%, you'll go to that, back to that original file, and you'll do the math to multiply it times 1.5. This one we did, we divided it by 2. Okay, so now we're going to place these files. Okay, so one thing is that you notice that it comes in with 3 locked layers. All right, One layer is the shoe layer. That's the layer that we're going to put the shoes in. Another one is the grid layer, and if I click this, you can see that's what it is. And then the other one is layer 1, and that's just the format layer. Now, one thing you might want to do is in the format layer, you would have to make sure that it's unlocked and then be in that layer, and then you could go to the text tool, and right here you could type in your name. I'm not going to go through that because I don't want to mess up this original file, okay? But you could put your name and then you'd be good. All right, now I'm going to lock that file, and I'm going to unlock the shoe layer file, and I want to make sure I'm on that layer. So I've selected it, and you can see it's highlighted in this sort of blue-gray. So I'm going to go File, Place. All right, and my desktop's going to come up, and so what I want to look for are these ones that are the ones that say shoe 150. That means it's 50%. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one in. You can only place one at a time. Okay, and it comes in. Now I go to the selection tool, and I can drag this guy up. One thing that's kind of nice, there is you can see these yellow lines, and you'll see these sort of grid. You see that red? That means that it's aligning with something. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave this like it is, okay? And then we're going to bring in the top view, and that's this one. Okay, now what's going to happen, watch this, as it lines up with the shoe above, it'll give me, there we go, that's intersect. We want it to intersect so I'm having a little bit of a hard time seeing exactly where they want to line up. So this is another thing that I think would be useful to do. I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to select, I'm going to go to View, and I'm going to select Rulers, Show Rulers. Now what that allows me to do is pull in some guidelines. So I'm going to get the selection arrow over here, and then I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag a guideline right to the edge, right? So that lets me know when my shoes, now I'm going to take the little arrow key, and I'm going to bump it over, and there they are, they're lined up, okay? So once I've got the alignment, I see I forgot to adjust the values on this. That wasn't very smart. And now I'm going to place the third one. So I'm going to go File, Place, and there it is right there. And I want this to line up with this guy right here. So I could also come up and pull a guide. Whoops, I'm going to the wrong one. I'm sorry. It would line up here. There we go. And now the baseline of the shoe and the front. So it has to be, it doesn't matter if you had them switched around, but basically what you want to do is when you're looking at the top view, you come up here and all the information should line up. So the front of the shoe is pointing to the left, pointing like here, and then the front view would be here. It wouldn't be down here. It needs to be up here. This is really critical to make this work. Okay, now I need to change the transparency because otherwise the lines aren't going to work. Okay, now I'm all in the shoe layer here. So what I can do is I can select one, and then I'm going to hit the Shift key. I could do that and select them all, or I could also run the selection arrow across them and they're all selected. Looks like there was a little point there. Whoops. Let me select everything, and then I'm going to go Object, Group. And now they're all grouped together. And what's nice about that is when I change the transparency, it'll change all of them at the same time. Like I said, I probably should have adjusted this and made it a little bit lighter. Okay. So now what I do is I go to the transparency tab here that I brought in, and I want to change the opacity. So if I click on the little arrow here, it'll bring the slider up and bring the opacity down probably around not 50, but maybe like 60%. So we can still see the shoe, but it's going to allow us to draw the lines. So if we don't do the opacity change, the lines aren't going to show up. We want the lines to dominate, but we need it in relationship to the shoe. Okay, so now that I have that, I can lock it. All right, so at this point, you could say, well, I just want to do everything by hand. And what you do is you save the file. I'm going to show you how to do that, and you want to export it as a PDF for printing. Okay. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm just going to go through how to save the file without going through the whole drawing system. If you wanted to try it, here are the drawing tools. It's the curve pen tool or the pen tool. There's the stroke up here, and you might want to set the stroke to something like 3, and you have to make sure that the stroke is set to black. So I know that's not maybe very helpful, but I can help people individually in class if you want. But this will get us, this will be fine for the 50% one. If you did want to draw on this, you do need to make the save the opacity like that. So we're good. So what I would do is let's lock the layers, and then we're going to go File, Save As, and we're going to save it first as an Illustrator file so we can, if we need to go back in, if we want to draw, we can do that. So it was originally called Wire Shoe. I changed it to my name so it will know that there's a difference between the original Wire Shoe template and the one that I've worked on. Okay, and I'm going to save it as Illustrator. I'm going to save it to the desktop. Okay, so because I've already saved it, I don't need to do that. Okay, but what I do want to do is I want to save it as a PDF for printing. So I would go File, Save As, and then instead of saving it as an Illustrator file, I would go Adobe PDF. Okay, and then I'm going to go Save. Now what's going to come up is a couple of things. So one of the things, Ray at CalCopy has suggested we do this. We're going to change it to a PDFX 210. What that does is it collapses the layers, and it's going to make it easier to print. Okay, and then we're going to go Save PDF. Okay. So what that was is that as soon as we do that, we won't be able to edit it because it's a PDF, but there it is right there. And then you're ready to print. So when you get ready to print, I would suggest saving this in your Google Drive, and then you go over to CalCopy and then download it from your Google Drive. You could put it in a flash drive, but I mean, it's really awesome just to do this completely without any hardware. Okay, so that's it for placing the Illustrator file. Okay.